Good morning and welcome to Inside Tennessee. Along with my co-moderator John North, I'm John Becker. And John, what a treat recently. You had a chance to sit down with two former Tennessee governors, one a Democrat and one a Republican, to talk about a project they have together.
Haslam-Bredesen and Bill Haslam, fascinating conversation. As you mentioned, Democrat and Republican, both have been two-term governors, both have been mayors. John, they've been working on this project for a couple years, just wrapping up season 2. They cover all kinds of topics, the kinds that you would think mostly people yell at, and they're like, we're not going to yell, we're going to have thoughtful conversation.
Here is a big chunk of that interview with John North and our colleague, Robin Wilhoy.
This is an honor for me to be able to spend some time with you and to listen to the wisdom that you, I know, are going to be sharing with us. But first and foremost, how did this podcast come to be? And this is a situation I want you all to chime in when you want. The questions are directed to both of you. How did this come to be, though?
I actually had thought about the idea for a while because I get so frustrated that people on both sides of an argument don't think the other side has any validity at all. And, you know, one of the things when you actually have to lead, you realize, you know, there's another side to the argument. It's, you know, even a pancake has two sides, as they say. And so I thought if we could have some environment where people could hear the other side thoughtfully presented, then maybe some of the polarization might start diminishing.
Yeah, the podcast, to be honest, was Bill's idea. And we've been friends for a long time, since long before, certainly before you were governor. And he called me up one day and just said, I've got this idea and so on. And it's one of those things you say, I should have thought of that myself. And it was worth trying. And I think we started out with the idea of it being, you know, an experiment and so on. But it's resonated with a lot of people, and we're really enjoying it.
Yeah. An experiment that's in its second season now,
yeah.
Wrapping up. The name of the podcast, you might be right. Of course, this coming from the great Howard Baker. When did you land on that name? How did you land on that for the podcast?
Well, this is actually, when I first thought of it, I thought, let's call it No Shouting Allowed. With the idea, like you see all the cable news shows, people shouting back, so let's have a no shouting allowed. But then we kind of stumbled on, or obviously knew about Baker saying, and thought that's actually the right idea, is start with this idea that the other fellow, always remember the other fellow might be right.
Yeah. I unfortunately, kind of ships passing in the night with Howard Baker and myself, and our careers were in sort of different places at different times. And I got to know him a little bit while I was governor, and I guess first really spent any time with him when he was ambassador to Japan. I was over there on a trip, and he's a man I really admire. I mean, it's a different party, obviously, and somebody who's got, you know, he had strong views about the way he thought the world ought to be organized. But I always respected the notion that he had this humility about him. He had this respect for other people's views and this feeling that you might be right. And one of the things we've lost a bit in this country is the ability to have discussions about these things, you know, knowing that you're not going to agree on it, but it helps to understand where the other person is coming from and see it as a genuine difference of opinion and not some character flaw in the other person.
Absolutely. You answered the question I was going to ask. What is your personal experience with Senator Baker?
Well, I actually knew Senator Baker well because my dad helped him on his campaigns, was his finance chair early, and then when I was in college, I went up and worked in Washington as an intern. This is pre-email, so I literally opened mail. I thought I was coming to save the Republic, but he thought opening mail was more appropriate for my skill level. But then later, when I first ran for mayor, he was helpful, and ran for governor, was helpful again. So, you know, I have a short list of mentors, but he'd be at the top of it.
Mm-hmm. What do you think the senator would think now, touching on what you both allude to, that no shouting allowed, but that's what we are getting a lot of, is a lot of shouting, and the other person not respecting the other person's view. What do you think he would be thinking?
Well, again, my exposure to him is somewhat limited. I was on the board of the Baker Center for a few years while he was still alive, and got to know him a bit there as well. I think he'd be disturbed. I mean, because it seemed to me that his view of the world was that good people can disagree about the way the world ought to be organized, and have those disagreements and make passionate arguments, but then go have a scotch together or a beer together or something after that. And that's the world I'd like to live in. I think he'd be upset about it. I wish I knew what he thought should be done about it, but unfortunately he's not here.
I had the privilege of going to Senator Baker's funeral when I was governor, and I walked in. It was in a tiny First Presbyterian church in Huntsville. I mean, a church about the size of your, any small town church. And I was so struck when I went in there how many senators and former senators were there, and it was about even Republican Democrats. I literally sat between then Vice President Joe Biden and Senator Al Gore. And next to him was Lamar Alexander. I mean, but the church was full of people from both parties, and it's kind of emblematic. You look at the major legislation to pass. If you're going to pass big stuff in a country that's evenly divided, you're going to have to work with the other side, which your own party doesn't always like that much. But I think Baker kind of modeled that out, maybe in an easier time today, but modeled that out. I think the other thing he'd say is, you got to remember he was a key player in Watergate, one of those crisis moments in the country. And besides the other fellow might be right, his other saying was, the Republic will survive.